What's up, guys? This is Zach with Top Deck Nation, and today we're going to be looking at the top 8 decks from the Fort Wayne Regional Championships that were held just a few weeks ago. So just for a little bit of background, this tournament was in the expanded format, which means that all the sets from the original Black and White 1 set all the way through Burning Shadows are legal. The standard format, of course, is now going to be Breakthrough on, so it did see a few sets rotate, but unlike that, Black and White through Burning Shadows is the expanded format, so nothing really rotated. We saw a couple cards banned, like Archeops and Forest Giant Plants, and that definitely made an impact in the format, but of course, this is, basically the same format as last year, so I am going to kind of walk you through that, guys. I do apologize, there hasn't been a lot of content in the last week or two. Things have been kind of crazy between work and school and some other stuff going on, so no worries. I'm not really going anywhere, but I will have some more videos hopefully up later this week. Hopefully I can sit down, do some batch recording and get some stuff up for you guys, so let me know in the comments what you guys want to see. So we are going to kind of go over this. This is going to be the Masters division, and if you want to see the other divisions like Senior Division, Junior Division, be sure to comment below. Maybe we can do a video like that, or you can always check out this website, which I'll link, of course. So we already did a video of the champion, the first place list by Michael Promowat, and now he's actually a 6-time regional champion, which is pretty crazy. I think there were a couple people that had already gotten 5 regional championships, like Israel Sosa, but Michael Promowat kind of beat that record out, 6-time regional champion. That is pretty crazy, but he was playing Night March, so this is going to be a pretty informal video, just kind of talk about my thoughts, kind of go over the list, give some really brief analysis, and hopefully maybe in the future we can have a more professional kind of video. But I do like that Pokemon has these lists available. They're in a nice little table kind of format. You can see the card images, copy the deck list, so pretty cool that they are making this kind of stuff transparent. So Michael's list here, it is Night March, and it's a really interesting deck choice here because, as you might know, Trevenant was really hyped for this tournament and for Expanded in general because it gained Necrozma GX. With Dimension Valley out, Necrozma can hit for a DCE, so just attaching a DCE and then that break attack doing 100 damage to all of your opponent's EXs and GXs. So Expanded is a really EX oriented format. You have Shaman EX, which is still going to be played in a lot of speed decks like Volcanion and Trevenant. You have Keldeo EX, Seismitoad EX, a number of attackers and support Pokemon. So I mean, Necrozma definitely fits in there, can do a lot of work. And then of course Trevenant can kind of spread that damage with Silent Fear, and maybe you can take up to 6 prizes in a turn. So to me that would be kind of scary to play Night March, but I think a lot of the better players, they decided to kind of counter that with a lot of big dark decks. Yveltal made an appearance, these speed Darkrai decks that were kind of hyped. So maybe the the hype kind of died for Trevenant. Less players were playing it. They were a little bit scared to play it. So Night March was probably a really good deck choice here. So we have Michael Promowat's list here. A lot of it is pretty standard. You have your Night Marchers, your Joltik, your Pumpkaboo, Lampent, but I like a lot of the additions he made. We see in a Ringaroo, so the late game is usually a big factor against Night March decks. If you can get them down to like 1 or 2 prize cards, you play the N. They've already exhausted their resources, so at that point, a lot of times they just kind of lose because they've already ran out of most of their DCEs and some other resources, supporters. So I do like a Ringaroo, and throughout the game, you can always thin out your hand, draw a couple cards every turn, and hopefully get what you need to get that knockout. I also like the addition of Tauros GX. Tauros, it's a pretty vanilla attacker. Attach a DCE, do 60, maybe 70 with a Fighting Fury belt. But, as you're kind of setting up your Night Marchers and burning through your deck, Tauros is really good because if they hit you, say for like 80 or 90 damage, you can just use that Mad Bull GX attack and kind of deal that damage right back for an instant KO. So I really like that. It's a little bulkier than a Night Marcher, and it just kind of provides you some cushion as you're getting those low HP attackers set up. But the start of the deck, and he's only playing 1 copy because you don't really have to focus on Marshadow, but it is a really great addition. The start of the deck, in my opinion, is going to be this Marshadow GX. It has this ability called Shadow Hunt that says it can use the attacks of any basic in your discard. So in this case, I have seen it in like speed Darkrai decks and some other like toolbox kind of variants focused around Marshadow, but in this deck, it's actually going to be using Night March. So previously, I've seen Mew Shadow, Mew X in this kind of deck, but Mars Shadow kind of replaces it because it has more HP, it has better type coverage, it can hit those dark Pokemon for weakness. So Mars Shadow is really interesting here. I love the inclusion of it, and I think we're going to be seeing it in Night March decks coming ahead. And then of course you have Tapu Lele and Shaman, 3 Shaman just to kind of burn through the deck, draw what you need, the 4 double colorless energy of course. As far as your supporters go, I mean, Night March is one of those decks, it's so consistent thanks to Battle Compressor, thanks to Shaman, thanks to just being able to attack for a DCE. So you don't have to play really thick counts of supporters because we can battle compress those, get them in the discard, and then reuse them with Versus Seeker. So you see a lot of pretty common supporters here. Ghetsis, of course, is very strong turn 1. Expanded is a very item-oriented format. People are trying to pull off those combos, just like this deck, for example. So a turn 1 Ghetsis is incredibly strong. Just kind of wipe all their items away, and then chances are they might even have to pass, and then you just kind of win the following turn. I've seen that a lot. So really strong choice here with Ghetsis. We are also seeing the 2-Dimension Valley. Dimension Valley, of course, is going to enable you to use Pumpkaboo's attack for a DCE. And it's also just a nice counter stadium against something like Silent Lab or Perilous City, whatever your opponent is playing against you, of course. We're also seeing Trainer's Mill and Puzzle of Time, Battle Compressor. You know, all of these are just kind of consistency cards. We're trying to burn through the deck, get exactly what we need, and then take those really aggressive knockouts early on. And then concluding the list here, Computer Search, it looks like was Michael's A-Spec choice. And I think it's a pretty standard choice, but unfortunately, if you are kind of new to the game or you just don't have many A-Specs, because it was printed so far back, I think Boundaries Cross, which was like 2012, maybe 2013, that was a few years ago. And so those booster packs are out of print. And so you're seeing Computer Search upwards of like $50, $60, $70, which is pretty ridiculous. I will say, I wish they would kind of reprint something for Expanded. I love the Battle Arena decks just because it's a great way for people to kind of enter that Expanded format, get some good cards there. But I do wish they would include some A-Spec cards just because these are getting, you know, pretty out of hand. Even the ones that aren't really played much, like Life Dew and Scramble Switch, I've seen some of those for like 15, 20 bucks, which is crazy. I think last season those were like $2 or $3 a piece. So hopefully Pokemon will do something about that. But that is going to wrap up Michael Promowat's list. Again, big congratulations to him because this was an 800 plus player tournament. So it's practically the size of like a US Nationals a couple years ago. So there were a lot of rounds. I think 9 rounds of Swiss, 6 rounds of day 2, which is crazy. And then your top 8. So, I mean, that's like 18 plus rounds to compete in. So pretty crazy. But we are going to be looking at the finalist list now. And that's going to be Sam Chen. And he was playing a Volcanion Turtonator list. And I think the same list was played by Ryan Sablehouse and a couple other players. I think it made like top 16 and some other top cut rankings. So it's a really good list, really interesting list, very aggressive. And as you can see here, 16 fire energy is probably the highlight of the deck. Just by, you know, first glance, it's pretty crazy playing 16 energy in any deck, but this deck really makes good use of it. So, you know, the focus of the deck is going to be Turtonator GX. Turtonator is such a great card, 190 HP, really bulky for a basic. Bright Flame is doing 160. You do have to discard a couple fire energy, but that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, just because you can just reattach those through, you know, your attachment for turn and Kiawe and the Baby Volcanion, Blacksmith, of course, so many different ways to attach that energy. And then Nitro Tank GX. This is what really makes the deck work, in my opinion. Being able to attach 5 energy from the discard just on the board as soon as you have, you know, as soon as your first turn, honestly. I mean, just put it up in the active, attach a fire, and go ahead and do that. So you can power up multiple Turtonator this way. Maybe you want to play it slow and power up the Baby Volcanion and switch into that. So much versatility here. And he's also playing 3 copies of the Steam Up Volcanion EX. And, you know, honestly, Volcanion probably isn't a main attacker anymore. It used to be. but there are better options now. I mean, Turtonator is probably your go-to card, but in case you run into like a Greninja deck or anything else that's weak to, that's like a water-based deck, maybe Ho-Oh GX is the card you'll play in that kind of matchup. And I like Ho-Oh because of this Phoenix Burn attack. You don't really use the other attacks, but Phoenix Burn is doing 180. It can't attack the next turn, but that doesn't really matter because you just kind of switch into another Pokemon, or you can Guzma and bring it back out. So much versatility here. And of course, there's also Shaman EX and Tapu Lele just to kind of get set up there. And again, 16 Fire Energy is ridiculous, but the reason he is playing so many, as you can see here, Blacksmith is attaching from the discard, Kiawe's attaching from the deck, Scorched Earth, of course, is providing a way of draw power. You can discard a fire, draw 2 cards, so kind of like an Acrobike, but better in the sense that there is a lot of synergy. You can put the fire in the discard and then use it on Turtonator thanks to Blacksmith or something. So Scorched Earth is a really great card and expanded paired up with that kind of card. And we also see 2 Battle Compressor here, and Battle Compressor is great to put any card in the discard. Maybe late game you're just trying to burn through your deck and get what you need for the game. You can put those fire energies in the discard just to power up Pokemon using Blacksmith, or even just putting your one of supporters like Karen or Acerola into the discard for later use. So Battle Compressor is really good. And as far as the supporters go, like I said, pretty standard counts of stuff. Kiawe is great in standard, but probably even better in expanded. Blacksmith is probably the supporter that makes the deck work. As you can see, he's not playing Max Elixir or anything. So, it kind of shifts over in expanded to playing more of a Blacksmith oriented kind of deck. But Volcanion's always going to be a pretty solid deck choice in expanded just because, it's got a lot going for it. It's got the draw power, it's got the energy acceleration, it's got the really aggressive attackers, the damage modifier thanks to Volcanion EX. But I think we'll see some more play out of these Turtonator Volcanion variants, assuming there's not, this huge influx of Seismitoad and Water Box decks. So the next player on this list, we have the 3rd and 4th players. Of course, we have Chris Sakala. He was a semifinalist and he was playing another unique deck, and that's going to be Speed Darkrai. But we're also featuring cards like Malamar and the brand new Darkrai GX as well. So the strategy of the deck here, it's pretty straightforward. You have Skyfield to make sure that you have a bunch of Pokemon on the bench, lots of bench space, and basically we're going to be using Hoopa. We're going to use that Scoundrel Ring ability to search out 3 EXs, and there are a lot of EXs to choose from here. We have Darkrai EX, which is your primary attacker. Of course, that Dark Pulse attack is doing more damage for each dark energy on the board. We've got the other Darkrai EX, which provides a means to not only free retreat out anytime we need to, but to also snipe damage. So something like Night March or Vespiquen decks, they don't really like those snipe attacks because you can take out multiple of their single prize attackers every turn. So that's really good in those kind of cases. And something that was really interesting was the Malamar EX. So when I was kind of testing the Speed Darkrai deck, and I think we did a deck versus Genesect, I think it's on the channel if you want to check it out, I didn't really think of Malamar. I was using more of like Hypnotoxic Lasers and Verbank City Gem to kind of add damage, but Chris actually opted to play Malamar, which is a really clever option. So whenever you attach an energy from your hand to Malamar, you can put your opponent's active to sleep. So that's really good in a number of instances. That means that your opponent has a 50% chance of staying asleep. So it could be good just in case maybe you're about to lose the game or you're kind of banking on your opponent not attacking next turn. But more importantly, it also has some obvious synergy with the Darkrai GX. That Dead End GX attack, it says that if your opponent has a special condition, it's instantly knocked out. So there's no problem setting up with the deck. You can easily get the GX out thanks to Battle Compressor. So really it's just a matter of getting that special condition on your opponent's active, and Malamar helps accomplish that. And just in case you do play against another, like a mirror match or anything else that plays Skyfield already, you can actually use Sudowoodo here. I think Sudowoodo is a pretty hot tech for this weekend. Sudowoodo is going to limit your bench, or your opponent's bench, I should say, to 4 Pokemon. So normally that doesn't really sound like much. 1 less Pokemon, not a big deal compared to something like Perilous City. But if your opponent is playing Skyfield, they really depend on it. Sudowoodo provides a really, really hard counter to that. They'll have to play Hex Maniac to get around it just for a turn. They'll have to knock out the Sudowoodo if they want to get rid of that effect. So in general, really, really strong. As far as the trainer cards here, he's playing some pretty standard counts of stuff. The Hex Maniac and the Colress, of course, are pretty big and expanded. Colress in particular is just incredibly strong because shuffle your hand into your deck and draw a number of cards equal to the number of bench Pokemon on both sides. So if you have 8 Pokemon, you've maxed out your Skyfield. If your opponent decides, hey, I'm going to use Skyfield too, I'm going to max up my bench, that's up to 16 cards you can draw off of a supporter. And that is ridiculous, especially considering all the usable cards you can play here. Battle Compressor, Dowsing Machine, Max Elixir, Dark Patch, so many ways to just kind of burn through your hand already. So Colress is really, really good in this kind of list. And as you can see here, he's actually playing 2 different kinds of energy acceleration. We're seeing 4 Dark Patch and 3 Max Elixir. I like this split just because a lot of times you don't really have to have Max Elixir. He is playing a pretty thick count of Dark Energy. He's playing 13 Dark Energy, but Dark Patch is your primary form of energy acceleration here. More often than not, you're going to have energy in the discard because of Battle Compressor, because of Ultra Ball, Professor Sycamore. So in a lot of cases, Dark Patch is going to be great for that energy acceleration, but a lot of times you might have some in the deck. Maybe you haven't really drawn into Battle Compressors or anything, so Max Elixir is also a way to get that energy on the board. And finally, it looks like Chris's choice for an ace spec was Dowsing Machine. I think Dowsing Machine is honestly the best ace spec. I think a lot of people play Computer Search just because it provides a little bit of a consistency boost. If you're only playing like 4 double colorless, for example, it gives you kind of like a 5th out to that. But Dowsing Machine is equally good just because reusing any trainer, so any of those 34 cards, it can be really good. I mean, if you prize your Versus Seeker, maybe it becomes another supporter or another Versus Seeker. If you prize a Dark Patch or a Max Elixir, maybe you just need one more energy on the board to, secure that win. Dowsing Machine can definitely do that. So really underrated ace spec. If you can't afford Computer Search, I would recommend Dowsing Machine. I think it's a little bit cheaper. I think it's more of like 30-35 bucks, but lots of different uses for that card. And finally, with the other person in the top 4, we have Christopher Vanier. Looks like he was playing a Night March deck as well, so I won't go into too much detail. Looks like some similar accounts to Michael Promo. We have the Tauros, the Oranguru, the Marshadow. Looks like he actually played 2 Marshadow instead of 1, which is pretty good. We're also playing the 4 DCE, so, a pretty standard Night March list. I'm just kind of seeing if there are any differences. I think Michael also played the Teammates. Looks like he is playing a copy of Perilous City. Maybe he predicted that there would be a lot of Darkrai. I don't really want to play Sudowoodo because it's going to be taking up bench space. Mega Rayquaza, for example, is another deck that plays Skyfield. So Perilous City, I could definitely see some uses for that as well. But I think that's pretty much the main difference. Do you see Dowsing Machine? So Dowsing Machines seem to be a pretty common ace spec among the top 32 players. So I think Dowsing Machine, again, really underrated card, especially if you play a lot of trainers. Night March is playing 37 trainers, so a lot of your deck is trainer cards. So I think Dowsing Machine is a great choice in Night March as well. So we are going to move on to the other 4 people. So the top 8 players, of course. And it looks like we're going to go ahead and start off with Gibson Archertong. It looks like he played a variant of Golisopod. And before you ask, he didn't really play for Duskull. That's supposed to be Wimpod. Every now and then the lists get kind of messed up. I don't know if the numbering is just kind of off or the set or something. So there are a couple mistakes here, but I will kind of clarify that for you guys just in case you're wondering. But he did play a Golisopod deck. A lot of people kind of hype this deck for Expanded because you have Acerola, you have AZ, you have so many ways to make sure that you scoop up the Golisopod and kind of heal that damage off. So, I think the deck going forward is pretty strong. But what I like about the expanded version of this deck is the fact that you have Blend Energy. So Blend Energy was all the way back in Dragons Exalted, I think, and back in like the days of like Team Plasma. Blend Energy was fantastic in those decks because it could count as 4 different types of energy. So in this case, this one counts as a grass, fire, psychic, or dark energy. So not only can Golisopod take advantage of it, but also Garbodor, since it's a psychic type. So pretty clever there, gives you some versatility. And as you can see here, all of his energy are special energies. So Blend Energy is probably your energy of choice here. If you were playing Grass Energy exclusively, that means that you couldn't really take advantage of Garbodor's Trashalanche. So by playing Blend Energy and Rainbow Energy, it gives us more outs to use Trashalanche and first impression, of course. And he's also playing a copy of the Dark Cloak Darkrai EX. I really like this because, again, Rainbow Energy, Blend Energy, they count as dark, so suddenly you have a way to free retreat out just in case something's active or Golisopod is about to get damaged. And he also opted to play a Giratina. This is supposed to be the promo, I believe, that shuts off abilities of breaks. So for things like Greninja Break and Trevenant Break, definitely not the Team Plasma Giratina, but that seems to be a pretty good tech card in this kind of tournament as well. I'm not sure how much play Greninja actually saw, but I'm sure Trevenant did see a moderate amount of play, or at least it was kind of hyped. So just in case, for precautionary measures, he was playing a Giratina, and I'm sure it definitely saw some play in a couple rounds or so. And as far as the trainer cards, as you can see here, he's playing a lot of cards that are pretty standard in the standard format, no pun intended. He's playing the Acerola, he's playing the Bridget. All of these cards are pretty big in Golisopod and standard. I think Teammates was also used at the World Championships, but Tropical Beach is pretty unique because it's only in the expanded format, so you draw until you have 7 and then you pass. But this could be pretty good to get set up. Maybe you're just trying to load your bench with Trebushes and Galisopods, just trying to get set up there. Tropical Beach is a good way to do that. But I think that pretty much wraps up this list. It seems pretty standard otherwise. You have the Tapu Koko to spread damage, of course. But I think that's pretty much it. He's playing computer search, maybe because he wants to search out those special energies, just have an overall consistency boost. So that is going to wrap up that Golisopod list. So now we have Zach Zamora, also a top 8 contender. Looks like he was also playing Golisopod. It looks like they didn't really mess up his list, not that I can see anyway. But pretty standard counts here. It looks like he's playing thicker counts of Tapu Koko to kind of spread damage. And Tapu Koko and Expanded is really solid against things like Night March and Vespiquen because you can just kind of take several prizes at once. Maybe they knock out a Tapu Koko or two, but in the long run, that damage spread definitely adds up. Looks like he actually played a copy of the other Golisopod, which I really like this option. Golisopod has an ability called Armor, so it takes 30 less damage, so it effectively is 160 HP instead. But this Resolute Claws attack is really, really underrated. It does 80 damage for a Grass and a DCE, so 2 attachments. And if your opponent's active Pokemon is a GX or an EX, it does 70 more damage. So, I mean, as you can see, if you pair this up with a Choice Band, you're going to be doing 180 every turn. So that is the kind of like the magic number. It knocks out things like Yveltal EX, Darkrai, EX and GX, Volcanion. So very good numbers to hit here. And I think Golisopod was a pretty good addition to this already strong Golisopod GX deck. He's also playing a 1/1 Octillery line, so the Abyssal Hand lets you draw until you have 5. And of course, he is playing Bridget, so it's pretty easy to search out the Remoraid line. The Tapu Koko looks like he is solely playing GXs. I don't even see Shaman or any other EX. So in a deck that's not really playing EXs, Bridget is so much stronger. Now, as far as our trainers go, he's playing a pretty thick count of Guzma, and that's just because of Golisopod's first impression attack. So if it becomes your active that turn, it does 120. Otherwise, it's only doing 30. So Guzma is a great way to kind of pick off some Pokemon from the bench like Shaman, since that's pretty common in standard, or expanded, I should say. And it's good just to kind of retreat out as well. But as far as some other outliers of the list, I do see that his ace spec was Scoop Up Cyclone. And this is pretty expected because this is a deck that really centers around denial. So, I mean, they can't really knock you out if you keep healing that damage off every turn. I've seen some builds with Max Potion, some other cards like that, Super Scoop Up, but they can be kind of finicky at times because they are kind of flip cards, or they burn your energy really quickly, unlike something like Acerola. So I think Scoop Up Cyclone is a pretty interesting choice of an ace spec here. And as far as some other uses for Scoop Up Cyclone, it doesn't even have to necessarily be the Golisopod. If something's stuck in the active, or maybe something was damaged previously, maybe you just want to scoop it up, or maybe you want to attack with just solely your single prize attackers, so you can just kind of scoop up your GXs on the bench. So those are some other options for using Scoop Up Cyclone, but definitely a clever choice there on Zach's part. And then the last couple players, we have Jack Carter and Israel Sosa. It looks like Jack Carter was playing a Gardevoir deck. And Gardevoir, unsurprisingly, not only strong in standard, but also expanded because really it just kind of gains a couple cards. I mean, it doesn't really lose anything, but it gains things like Wonder Energy. So as far as this list goes, again, there was another error here. Instead of Heatmor, that should be the Diancie that evolves your Pokemon right away. So that's good to evolve your Kirlias and your Ralts, things like that. But we see a 4-2-3 line of Gardevoir that seems to be pretty standard, as well as a Gallade. So Gallade's Premonition is really strong, letting you arrange the top 5 cards of your deck, and also hitting things like Darkrai for weakness, Drampa for weakness, etc. So Gallade's pretty strong in that regard, and all for a DCE. It's not even like you have to attach several energy. Just for a DCE, Gallade's putting in a lot of work there. We also see that Sudowoodo tech seems like it was pretty common for the weekend, and Alolan Vulpix, which is one of my favorite cards now. Ever since that Metagross deck played Alolan Vulpix, I've been playing it in pretty much every Stage 2 deck I play, and I find that it helps so much, especially if you're playing Bridget, and a lot of one energy cost retreaters. You can just kind of retreat out the first turn, search your deck for the 2 Pokemon you need. So if you already have Rare Candy, that's great. If you don't, maybe get the Tapu Lele for the Skyla for the Rare Candy. But in general, Alolan Vulpix is just so good in these Stage 2 decks. As far as the energy goes, pretty standard counts except for the Wonder Energy. So Wonder Energy prevents all effects of your opponent's attacks if it has the Wonder Energy on it. So in this case, things like Trevenant's Silent Fear. So damage counters are not damage. It's actually more of like an effect. So it would be preventing that kind of thing. So Wonder Energy is really strong. And as far as some trainers here, some pretty standard counts. Teammates is fantastic if you need a couple cards in a pinch. The 2 Bridget I really like. I think 2 Bridget should be the way to go going forward because a lot of these decks, they're just so reliant on Bridget that, even though there's just a small % chance of prizing it, if you do, it could already cost you the game because you'll have to manually get out every single Pokemon. You're not playing level ball or anything. So in general, I think 2 Bridget is probably going to be the way to go going forward. And of course, it looks like he's also playing Computer Search just for that consistency factor. Dowsing Machine, also a great choice here because you could reuse rare candies if you discard them early on. But Computer Search is also really good if you're trying to pile that energy on the board. You're searching for the Choice Band, the DCE, which it looks like he's not really playing Choice Band, but that is another option as well. So as far as our final list here, we have Israel Sosa, who doesn't really need an introduction, like I said, but of course he was playing a traditional dark deck, which I think he took 3 regional championships with dark decks just a few years ago. So it looks like he's kind of keeping that trend just because dark decks are still really good. I mean, even Yveltal EX, for instance. So that's what he's revolving his deck around. We see Yveltal EX as an attacker. We see some other attackers that can make use of DCE, like Seismitoad EX, for instance. So this is really a blend of a Darkrai, Yveltal, Seismitoad kind of toolbox deck. So it's interesting to see him take it all the way to a top 8 finish. Just kind of goes to show you that some of the older decks, they still have some life in them. And just because there's some new decks out there like Gardevoir and Golisopod doesn't necessarily mean that Yveltal and some other decks like that are unplayable. He's also playing a copy of the Sableye with Junk Hunt, so this is really good if you want to get back some lasers or Dark Patch or anything like that, for instance. And then, of course, he's playing the Darkrai EX that snipes damage for free retreat, as well as the GX, which can take advantage of that Hypnotoxic Laser and get that instant KO. So a pretty versatile deck. I really like this list a lot. The Sudowoodo, again, seems to be like it was a really popular tech choice for Fort Wayne, probably because of the Skyfield decks and things like that. As far as the trainers go, again, that gets us pretty popular and expanded. We see the Verbank Laser combo here. We see Verbank City Gem and Hypnotoxic Laser. So I thought this would see more play. Some of the decks opted not to really play it, but I think this is just a really good combo with things like Seismitoad, Darkrai GX, especially because of that instant KO. And it's almost acting like a plus power. I mean, it's just adding an additional 30 damage if you have Verbank City Gem out. So in general, I think Verbank City and lasers are super strong going into the expanded format this season. And it looks like he's also playing a copy of Silent Lab. Lots of really big uses here. Could be good against Volcanion, could be good against your opponent's Sudowoodo, or any deck that really plays basic Pokemon with abilities. So Tapu Lele, Shaman, lots of cards in expanded. And of course, he's also playing things like Dark Patch, Fighting Fury Belt, just to add a little bit of bulk to your attackers. And then Computer Search was his A spec. I think I've seen his lists play Dowsy Machine in the past, but Computer Search is also really, really strong. He does have some one-of cards like Silent Lab and Floatstone, so Computer Search is a great way to kind of search those out as well. But I think I've covered everything, guys. I'm a little bit out of breath here because there was a lot of content to cover, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this kind of analysis. Again, I am trying to get into the routine of things between work and school. It has been kind of crazy, but I do want to try to start pushing out maybe 3 videos a week and maybe even starting the YouTube stream or Twitch stream as well. So if you want to see some live battles and stuff, let me know in the comments below. I do want to try to have more content variety for you guys. And hopefully we will be starting a Patreon account pretty soon. So if you are interested in showing your support that way, definitely appreciate it. I've seen some other content creators do that. So I think that's going to be the way forward, hopefully to make the channel a little more professional, make it look and sound better, have better equipment, things like that. Would definitely appreciate that support. But in the meantime, this has been Zach with Top Deck Nation. Be sure to subscribe and like this video if you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next video later this week. Thanks for watching.